Hello and welcome to Manny Beal. This would be part 6, as far as I am concerned, of my series on ontology and offshoots from ontology like metaphysics and so on. This time I'm going to take a stab at idealism and maybe in particular analytic idealism. But this is idealism as such in general, right? And I'm not showing you my own ontology here. I have tried to present as I think idealists understand ontology, metaphysics, so to say, right? Okay. So if you try to keep my presentation of my ontology in mind while you do this, then I will sort of probably refer back and forth, right? Okay. Idealists is another approach to the paradox of materialism, right? Or a proposed solution, whatever you want to put it, right? Now, what most people who end up in some kind of idealism all agree upon is there is the problem, there is the paradox built into materialism or physicalism or naive realism, however you want to frame it, right? And it's I feel I'm sliding down in my sofa here. I'm sinking deeper and deeper. Never mind. It's like as I've said before, usually people can have a fairly good consensus on what is the problem in maybe a mainstream kind of philosophy, right? Like materialism. And then the problem arrives when they try to come up with an alternative explanation. Then that's usually where the problems arrive, right? And I agree with most of the framing I've heard idealists criticize materialism for. I'm basically on board with the criticism. What I'm not on board with is their alternative, right? And it's always about the philosophy. I want to remind you that philosophy is not presenting your conclusions. Because I don't give a fuck about the conclusions if I don't get the thinking between the conclusions, right? How do you get from A to B? That's always what you should be looking for, right? Don't just eat any solution raw, right? Not even if it fits with your picture, right? Because you might have a screwed up picture of the right conclusions. And if somebody just served the same conclusions as you have accustomed to, you're just confirmation biasing your conclusion. So what you should always look for is the glue between the conclusions, right? How do you get from A to B? That is what is interesting, or that is why you want to philosophize, right? It is because you want to have the good glue between the conclusions. Otherwise, you can't decipher whether or not you actually found some cohesive conclusions, or you're just cherry picking conclusions out of the blue, right? You can't decide. You can't differentiate between it, whether or not it is grabbed out of your ass or actually argued. That's why the glue between the conclusions, the actual arguments, or whatever you want, philosophy, what you want to call it, that's the interesting bit. That's where it gets interesting, and that's where it gets difficult, and you have to be fucking strict, right? And that is particularly important when you're dealing with idealists, because it seems they are very good usually at using words so it sounds like they are creating a philosophy that makes argument A, B, and C, and so on hang together. And by A, B, and C, I'm not referring to my ontology. Argument 1, 2, and 3, there I should say maybe, right? And it sounds like they're doing something that is cohesive. It just isn't, right? And I'm going to try to point out the incohesion cohesiveness of how they approach it, right? What I agree with idealism on, or I'm not agreeing with idealism, but when they argue for this, I agree so insofar as I am, quote, dissociated from an external world, right? And that step in itself is very important to take a very close look at, because if I say I'm dissociated from an external world, how did I get to the idea of the external world? I pointed that out before in prior parts and in prior older podcasts, right? Or the presentations. Then when you say I am not experiencing an external world, then where is that? How did you get to that? What is the glue between you and that external world? How do you get from my experience to the external world, right? That's what they forget. That when they say, and I'm jumping a bit here, sorry about that, but I agree about the identification of the paradox, that you cannot have an experience and then at the same time that experience can be the outside you're experiencing. You can't do that. That's ridiculous, right? That is bad thinking. Insofar, I agree with all idealists I've heard, right? But then it stops. I'm start to be critical, right? Because then they keep that external world as if it's just given, right? They don't scrutinize. Why the hell am I thinking about an external world? I'm not saying that you're removing the external world necessarily. Quay the other arguments I presented in the one prior to this, where you can't say it isn't there, but you can't say it is there either, right? And I think that's a pretty good argument, right? Oh, it's not really an argument. It's actually a dilemma, you could say, right? But identifying the dilemma in the first place is the step to be skeptical about how you argue, right? But you cannot take anything for given or granted or anything like that. As soon as you hear somebody says, well, this is given and this is granted and this I'm just working because you can't refute it or something like that, be careful, because then they're trying to fuck with you, right? Whether or not they're aware of it. Nothing is given. That's why you're philosophizing, right? Otherwise, you could just say, hey, it's given. This is the case. Done, right? Okay. They keep the idea of the external world without any scrutinization or any clarification of how they get from I have experience to there must be an external world, right? There must be, as if it just follows, as if it's just given to you, right? That's where a skeptic would stop and say, hang on, mate. How do you just refuted that your experiences are not an external world. Then there is no externality left, because all you have access to are these phenomena, or whatever you call them, that you are referring to. So, poof, away goes an external world. You have reduced yourself into getting rid of an external world. Now you need to re-establish it. If you're going down to the base, right, and I will keep going and say the base is the qualia, right? But if I want to get back to an external world, how do I do that? None of them argue. The closest thing you can get is something like Berard Cast who says something along these lines. I don't think you can get rid of it. I don't think you can get rid of an external world. That is not a fucking argument, because it implies that it's given to you. It's already there. Now I have to argue it away. No. You just said you only have experiences. Right? You only have your own, let's say, personal phenomena. There is no externality to that. It's given by the definition of the idea of it, right? All you have access to is your experiences, so to say. Let's just say it that way. Well, if that's all I have access to, then an idea of an external world that is sort of derived philosophically must be because of those phenomena. Otherwise, I'm just pulling it out of my ass, right? And I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just pulling out of my ass. I'm pretending that it follows from my experiences. I'm not buying that, right? In my opinion, you cannot obviously not derive an external world from phenomena within your world, right? It doesn't follow from your experiences that there must be something beyond your experiences. And your qualia, maybe I should say more precisely, right? What is it about a particular color that would make you say, oh, there must be an external world, right? What is it about a sound or a taste that say, oh, now it follows, there must be an external world? It doesn't follow from that, right? There's no phenomena from which it follows, right? You might have already gotten accustomed to or followed a dogma that has been impressed or imprinted in you by yourself or somebody else, that there is an external world, and you have just been working from that idea all your life. But that doesn't prove anything, right? That's not philosophy. Oh, I'm used to do that. It's customary. It's a culture, right? No, that's not an argument, right? How does it follow? Well, the point is it doesn't. So, if you want to establish an external world, that's my approach, right? You have to say, I am going with the idea. I am establishing it axiomatically, which is another way of saying, I can't argue for it. I have to establish it. If you don't want to establish it, fine. I can't tell you how you would philosophize. But I am philosophizing in this direction using this axiom, right? Then you are honest about how you get to things. If you can't get from A to B with philosophy, the only way to do it is saying, I'm going with it axiomatically. I'm making the leap using an axiom and saying, I'm going with this. That's another way of being very honest about how you actually philosophize, right? What idealists always do is throwing around various abstractions and terms, and all of a sudden out of that pops an external world, or it's just there already, as if it's given to them, right? Somehow, without any need for clarification. The closest thing, as I've just said, is somebody like Berard Cast, who says, sorry for the dinging, some messages checking in. Interestingly, I have closed down most apps on my computer here, but apparently there are some dinging still. Okay, that's a problem that is not addressed by idealists, right? And it seems like nobody who's actually trying to be rigid and strict about philosophy or how they argue in philosophy never used the idea of an axiom. It's basically saying I am not either I can't. It's impossible to argue for this, or I'm not in a situation where I can actually, with confidence, say this is a decent argument for why I'm going from A to B. But I needed to get further ahead in my philosophy, so to say. So I'm just saying I'm establishing an axiom. I might be able to get rid of the axiom later if I can argue, right? But, the deeper we get into these ends of philosophy, the more fucking strong the argument has to be. It always has to be strong. But, going wrong here in bad argumentative structure has huge ramification for the rest, right? It's, if you want to go to Rome, unless you live in Rome, right? If you go in the opposite direction, you will never get there, right? But if it's the last 200 meters you get wrong in Rome, okay, you're just at the wrong address. You're still in Rome, right? So the earlier in your journey you go wrong, the more spectacularly you go wrong in the sort of final consequence, right? Okay, so that's the first big problem. That they keep an external world without clarifying it. That's my conviction. I have never heard any idealist present a good argument for that external world, right? It's most idealists, I would think, take the same route as I have done, right? And I think that nobody grows up being idealist. I understand that Christians or all religious people have been pounded about this mystical, sky ghost and whatever, right? Or prophets or whatever, who either live in the past or on the other side of the universe or something like that. That they have been inflicted with since childhood, so they have been accustomed to some kind of woo-woo, kind of mental something beyond the mind and whatever, right? So that might be a reason why there are quite a lot of Christian people who are attracted to idealism. No wonder, right? But somebody who's sort of materialist from childhood and onwards until the age of 50 plus, in my case, right? Who suddenly realize the paradox and potentially end up becoming an idealist, potentially, right? Take a certain route of thought. Suddenly, a sort of a barrier is pulled down, and you realize there's a bit of philosophy I've never been doing that I actually should be doing. I have been taking something for given, granted, that I didn't need to scrutinize. Now there's all sorts of foundational shit I need to get a grasp on, right? And they come from the idea of materialism, and that entails an external world by default, right? And what they forget in their lack of skepticism is scrutinizing, as I pointed out, that external world. They keep the external world while they remove any description of that external world, but because they're convinced of that external world, they try to find some other avenue to justify what is going on there in that external world that they haven't scrutinized, right? They mix up the idea of an area and what the area is made of. They think in the materialist fashion, if I describe that area, what it's made of and how it works, I have described the area, so to say, right? That's a materialist approach to describing something beyond materialism in a way, right? And that's why it gets, and when somebody like Berard Cast tells me that idealism is very parsimonious, I am, reacting very strongly because I find it hugely convoluted and complicated and very abstract and all sorts of violations of, you don't have a sufficient ontology, that you're using various categories and cherry picking this, that, and the other to put together this quilt of weirdness that somehow explains whatever is going on in my mind that I can't change anyway, right? Okay, so let's get deeper into it, right? That inside, right? There's an inside and there's an outside. The above thing here, the screen with the ripples on, is outside, so to say, right? That's the external world to the idealist. And the rest below here, just similar to my ontology, is what is sort of what they have access to, their phenomena, right? Okay, so what idealists usually do is they consider what goes on in the mind basically as one big cauldron of shit going on, right? There's no particular ontology to the inside of the mind. And I don't want to use the one. How should I put it? Let's say internal and external, right? Okay. The internal bit is just a lot of shit going on, right? And then there's another bit in the internal world which is that which is aware of these things going on, right? So what idealists do is there's shit going on internally, and there's a part of my internal aspect that is aware of all that shit is going on. And they call that consciousness and meta-consciousness. And consciousness is the phenomenal shit like colors and sounds and, matter, emotions, anxiety, suicidality, just protons. All these, without further clarification, it seems to me at least, right? I have never seen any metaphysical philosopher taking any time to scrutinize and classify and clarify the various phenomena into an actual ontology. Because all they're really interested in is that which is beyond their experience. So they don't really care about how they interconnect these. There are colors and sounds and smell and music and your love and anxiety, the science. It's all sort of, that's not really, it's there, but it's not really important. It's what's outside I'm interested in, because I don't have direct access to it, but I so badly need to describe what it is, right? But then they say, okay, then there's metaconsciousness, because I'm not, there's not only the experience, but there's something that is aware of it. And that is me, the subjective, right? The subjective, the phenomenal consciousness, awareness of it, right? It's basically the cogito, I would think that. I think, therefore I am, right? There's a me, there's a meta-consciousness that is aware of these phenomena, which is also called consciousness, right? So, how do they approach the idea of that external world? Because if they are convinced of an external world, they must somehow be able to describe it. Apparently that's their thinking, right? They must be able to materialize it in a way, in order to explain why red is red, or love is love, and mind is mind, and sound is sound, or psyche, science, matter, whatever, why it is the way it is. Now, the step they take here is of a linguistic nature. It's a switch. It's a linguistic sleight of hand where they switch the understanding of the word. And I actually think that when you switch the meaning of a term, is a sort of a semantic. Is it a semantic fallacy? I don't remember. There is a fallacy that is a named fallacy for when you switch the meaning of the term, right? No, it's not equivocation. I forget. But never mind. What they do is they usually use the term mind, right? And mind is basically just a catch-up or catch-all term. Like if you were drawing a circle around the bottom here, right? The A and B category. If you take both the A and the B and lump them together in one big bag, the label on that bag would be mind, right? That's mind. And then they say, because I call it mind, it's all made of mind, right? It's all made of mind. That's the sophist trick. That is the switch. It would be the same as saying, if you go to a farm, go into the countryside, and there are all sorts of animals in the fold over there, right? And you say, oh, these are all animals. I guess they're all made of animal, right? That's the same kind of argument, right? It is that stupid. It is that fucking freaking stupid, right? Or they're saying, okay, that's a car. I guess it's made of car, right? That's the same approach to this consciousness and meta-consciousness. They call it mind, and then they say, it's all made of mind, right? So now I have that's what it's made of, right? Now I'm going to say, because I don't want more than one thing, right? Because if there's more than one thing everything is made of, then I have to explain how did I get to that new thing, right? And how do these two things combine? If there's an inside or an outside, and the outside is made from something different, how do they interact, these two kinds of things? But if I say the inside, the internal, is made of mind, what if I say that the outside is also made of mind? So I don't run into the problem of explaining more than one thing. I've already explained the thing because I'm accustomed to call it mind, and everybody else is, right? And then by switching the category and now start to call it is made of mind, I can also say that the external world is made of mind. And not only that, but I've heard a lot of times idealists say they call that external the reality, right? That doesn't fly at all for me, right? Reality is an abstraction I am creating in my personal category C, which are abstractions, right? Reality is just a mental picture I have of what is going on in a combination of that which I have direct access to and a combination of my memory and maybe my imaginations and all sorts of shit, right? That's reality. Reality is not something that is outside myself, right? This is ridiculous. Okay, so now we're going into more precisely analytic idealism. I'm not sure about other kinds of idealists. It seems like they are all sort of trying to find the best way to come up with shit that you can refute, right? By using a concept, maybe, or an abstraction from a concept to explain things with, you can be so abstract that you cannot possibly refute it, right? If I talked about a point, for instance, or a line or something like that, with an abstraction used in mathematics, for instance, I can use that to describe the world, but it's all based on something that is a pure abstraction, right? In the same sense, they come up with the idea, and that's particular for analytic idealism, I think, the idea of a ripple. Just like I presented here, like these ripples in whatever it is, water or something like that, right? It actually looks like it might be a drawing or painting or something like that. When you see the interference between the wave patterns, whatever, right? Whatever. Then they say, but if it's mind, it seems like, I mean, if you say everything is mind, if you say inside is mind, outside is mind, it's just, one big of the same thing, then it seems like, why are there different colors then? Why are there also tastes? Why are there also smells and so on? Why am I sometimes experiencing concrete, and then I'm experiencing elephant, and then I'm experiencing soft ice? It seems it's not always the same, right? No. So how do you have variation within something that is the same? Now it starts to get convoluted, right? It's the same, but it's different, right? Actually, I pointed out in maybe a video that is somewhere between 1 or 2 years old, right? That as soon as you say everything is mind, your philosophy actually should stop there. If I say everything is mind, it's like done. That's it. Everything is mind. I don't need any further clarification. If you need further clarification, it cannot all be mind, in my opinion. Because then you're just taking whatever variation you are actually experiencing and just taking any phenomena you can possibly refer to and think about and experience, and just saying, yeah, by the way, it's also, everything is mind, right? It's just a magical term that you can pull out of your, or take off the shelf and say, hey, by the way, it's all mind, right? It would be equally explanatory to say it's all oggy-goggy, right? Yeah, by the way, it's, color and smell and taste and sound and matter and science and anxiety and so on. It's all oggy-goggy. Well, what is oggy-goggy? Well, that's what everything is. It's no different. There is no difference. You're just very used to hear the term mind, right? You have heard the term mind since you were, a child, possibly, right? And therefore you have accustomed to accept that there must be something, some existence of some kind behind the term. But if I say it's all oggy-goggy, it would be equally explanatory. The point is, it isn't. I'm just attaching a term to everything. And because they do that, then they can basically have not only dualism, but basically pluralism. But whenever anybody asks anything, they just say, yeah, it's all mind, Yeah, it's all mind. But why if it's all mind, then you have basically explained everything, right? Why do you need further clarification? Well, then they say, and that's where it gets really fluffy, right? That's where somebody like Berard Cast says, well, it excites itself, the mind. The mind itself excites. Why does it do that? Oh, no, we can't get to that. It does it because it does it. We can't get to the explanation. It is what it is. It does what it does. It starts to vibrate and create ripples in itself, right? And that ripple is different from that ripple and whatever. And that's why you see that smell is one kind of ripple and that color is another kind of ripple and that reason is one, second, third, fourth, and plural. That's why it's all different. But it's still the same, right? So there are all sorts of shortcomings in this, right? This explanation is completely disconnected from any checkpoints. It's basically just conjure up. Because it's an abstraction, somebody who's an idealist can get away with using it because you can, first of all, never go and check because you don't have access to that external world, obviously, right? And it's so abstract that you can't. I mean, it fits also with the picture of force fields or electromagnetic fields and what's it called, entanglement of particles and all this shit, right? Quantum shit. And so on. It fits with the bill. He's trying to, okay, but then how would you describe? Oh yeah, but it's also fields, quantum and quantum fields or whatever, right? So it fits with the idea of fields and waves, and it vibrates and so on, right? Maybe even superstrings and. The freaking point is, you didn't even clarify how you had an idea of an external world, right? And reality is an abstraction, or maybe an abstraction upon an abstraction, right? A ripple is also an abstraction. It must be a part of your mind. I can't refer to any phenomena without it being a part of my mind. I can't imagine something and then say that is beyond my imagination. But then you're doing the same thing as a materialist does. You just do it with some weird abstraction rather than beavers and Eiffel Towers, right? You're doing it with ripples and excitations and something that is so abstract that nobody can really grasp it, right? This is sort of a materialist approach to an external world as an idea, right? I'm not sure even how to phrase it, right? And it's fucking mental, right? It is all mental. Idealism is completely mental, and that's correct in more than one way, right? And then there's also another problem that they seemingly, rather than having dualism or saying that what they do is they blur the lines between various aspects of pluralism and then just say, bring in the magical term called mind, right? So everything can be different everywhere. It's not like there's a hard line between this is mind and this is matter or something like that, right? It's all mind and matter mixed together, and that's maybe also why there's something like panpsychism is so popular, because they're just mixing the bowl and say, hey, you can't find anything now, right? Hey, now I got a new philosophy and just mix the shit up, right? It is all based on abstraction. And because it's an abstraction, it is a part of my mind, right? So if it's a part of my mind, it cannot possibly be a description of something beyond my mind. So I can't get out of the idea, or out of the limitation of if I can imagine it. It is because it's a part of my mind. That's why that is an imagination. That's what it is. By definition, from this base ontology, right? So no matter what imagination I can come up with, it must be a part of my mind. Then it's not a part of an external world, then, right? It doesn't matter how freaky weird your abstraction is, it is still an abstraction. And because it's abstraction you apparently have access to, it must be a part of your mind. Then it's not a part of an external world. I mean, how hard is this to understand, right? Ah, man, these idealists, man, they are fucking crazy. Okay, another problem that they are grappling with, idealists, is, okay, some criticism would be like, well, okay, if everything is mind, why is there this inside-outside dichotomy in the first place, right? Why? Why am I as an internal thing dissociated from that outside? And you're using the term that analytic idealists use, right? Why am I dissociated? They can't explain it, right? Yes, they come up with all sorts of psychological reasons, like there's this woman in Germany who hit her head and fell down the stairs and all of a sudden had some weird dreams. And there's another dude over there who's also fell down or hit his head on his bicycle and he also had some weird dreams. And they're apparently dreaming the same thing, but they have two different persons inside them and so. And they have reported this and reported that. That is not philosophy, right? That is an appeal to something that you cannot possibly be that cannot be possibly accepted as any kind of reasoning, because a report or something on a computer screen or the sounds the person makes or whatever, that is a color, a smell, a taste, a sound, and so on, right? So you are saying, now I need somebody to explain it to me. I can't think of, oh, I heard a sound. I saw a color. I interpreted that color as this kind of a philosophy and explanation. That fits with my idea. Now I'm going to bring that, quote, science in. No. That doesn't work, right? And the reason why it doesn't work is because the whole ontology here is fucked up. There is no ontology in this, right? There's a lot of shit going on in my mind, and I'm aware of it, right? And now I'm going to tell you about what is beyond my mind. There is no strict, cohesive ontology to any idealism I have seen, or the ontology part of their idealism, right? They call it all metaphysics, and then they focus purely on these ripples outside, right? The point is, in my opinion, that the reduction is not about what goes on, about what goes on beyond your experience. Ontology is purely describing your experience. And when you do that, in my opinion, you end up with something along the lines which I presented in part 1 of this series here, right? Which is first the qualia, then from that comes cognitions, and from that comes various abstractions of all sorts of kinds, right? Or derivatives, something that falls out of qualia and cognitions, and maybe qualia just, but these have to be in place first, right? But if you're trying to philosophize from a reduction base, which is qualia, in my opinion, you can't use the qualia to explain the qualia, right? That's why it's all axiomatic, because you're just saying, this is my reduction base. I can't explain it, right? And because it is inexplicable, you can't use a qualia like a report or the sound of somebody talking to explain the foundations of that which you're trying to explain, right? It's like saying, now I'm going to make some philosophy that establishes science, which would be some endeavor you could do, right? I'm creating all sorts of ontology and metaphysics and principles for doing science and so on. And then at some part in that philosophy, you're going to say, now I'm going to bring in some science to validate the philosophy that is going to be used to do science, right? That would be the same kind of circular reasoning. It doesn't work. Any appeal to observation cannot be an explanation of what it goes on beyond explanation, right? Or beyond experience. So this is just cherry picking various shit that fits the bill. It's incoherent. It's not cohesive, and it's not actually an argument. It's the pretense. It's somebody who wants to connect the dots to get to a certain explanation, right? It's not based on rigid foundational ontology and built from that. It's imaginary. And that's why I don't trust any idealism, because they usually skate over very, very important arguments as if it's just, I can cherry pick this, or that thing is given, and I'm going to change the description, the label of something into what it's made of, like, this is an animal, therefore it's made of animal, that kind of, it's ridiculous, right? So, I'm not sure if I have any more to say about it. The problem of the dissociation is that it's the same thing on both sides, right? If you have a glass of water and you say there's the left side of the water and the right side of the water, right? Okay, so somebody might ask, what keeps it separated, right? Well, there's a dissociation in the middle there. I don't see any dissociation. No. But there was somebody who had a glass of water down in Germany, and they say they saw a dissociation there in the water. So therefore, there must be dissociations in the glass of water. It's the same kind of, I'm not buying that, dude, right? I think, and somebody like Berard Cast has said this more than a few times, at least a few times, right? That whatever it might be beyond his experience is paradigmatically different from your experience. While at the same time, he jumps in basically into describing what the hell it does. It ripples and whatever, right? Yes, it's very abstract, but he still talks about what it is, right? And what it does. It ripples. While at the same time he says, my experiences are a completely different paradigm from what it is outside, right? Okay, so if it's made of the same thing, mind here and mind there, but my experience is a completely different paradigm from that which is outside. But if it's made of the same thing, why are they so different then? But it seems like they sort of start to go into, well, now I'm just coming up with explanations that fits the bill, right? I'm just coming up with an explanation. It's sort of a conspiracy theory kind of approach, right? I'm just explaining whatever I want. But I came up with an explanation. Can you refute that explanation? I guess I can't. Okay, so it's valid then, right? I'm going with it because it fits my bill. That's the level of quality of these kinds of argumentations. I'm not buying it, right? And I would say, if it's so different outside compared to your inside, why wouldn't it be more parsimonious to say, maybe not parsimonious, but more reasonable or rational to say it's probably different. It's probably something else. And that would also explain why we're dissociated, or why I'm dissociated from an outside, if there is an outside, right? If I'm saying there is an outside, I'm working from it axiomatically. The fact that I'm using an axiom is also a way to say I haven't established it. I'm just working from it. Just saying I'm working from the idea that it is an outside doesn't establish an outside, right? That's very important, because an axiom is a way of saying I'm working from the idea, but the idea itself doesn't all of a sudden materialize into an existence, right? That's also where they go wrong. They refute to use the axiomatic approach to an external world, right? They say, because I want it to be there, therefore it's there. Right? It's the closest argument I can get to. I want it to be there, therefore it's there. I decided, without clarifying it as an axiom, that it's still there, even though I refuted the materialist approach. So because I did that, now I have to explain it. It's not no. You're just jumping from one fallacious argument to another, right? You have to stay with your phenomena. That's what you have to work with, right? It would be the same as saying, yeah, but I have to explain this tomato before I can eat it, right? I have to understand every fucking single atom or whatever it is down there in my car before I drive it. No, you don't, right? It's more important you understand how to drive the car than to understand how the fuck is it put together, right? What is beyond my cabin here? What is under the hood over there? I can't open the hood to the motor, but I'm trying to. There are probably ripples under the hood, right? And I have to understand these ripples before I drive the car. No, you don't, because you don't have access to it in any case. Maybe that's not the best analogy to use a car, because that's something you can actually open the hood, right? But stay with me, right? It doesn't change the car that you understand every fucking detail of the motor. You still have to drive the car the same way, right? Maybe there's a slightly less anxiety about what the hell might be going on in that motor out there. If you can come up with some kind of harebrained explanation that makes you say, okay, it's all ripples under the hood. Now I can drive my car, without anxiety. But that doesn't change the driving of the car, that you have less of that category C abstraction called anxiety. Right? So, at the end of the day, if it's sort of a practical, low-down, everyday approach to this, what changes in my everyday if I'm convinced that it's all ripples out there that is responsible for all of it somehow, right? What is it? What changes? Does the tomato change? No. The way I approach tomatoes, does that change? No. Right? Nothing fucking changes, right? So why would I spend time on trying to come up with an explanation of an area I don't have access to, and an explanation that doesn't change anything any of the phenomena, right? I can only maybe get more confused about it, right? Why the fuck would I want to spend my hard-earned life on that, right? Why would I spend my youth on on stupid thinking like that. It doesn't bring me anywhere, right? That's why I say ontology is infinitely more important than this harebrained metaphysics, which is beyond your ontology. Because it's your ontology where you actually go and come up with ways to approach various aspects of your everyday, right? If I see a tomato, can I just start eating it, right? Isn't that more important to figure out than whether or not it might be ripples that it's actually out there, that I can't change anyway, I can't get to it, right? And it doesn't change the tomato. Why would I spend time on that, right? Rather than try to figure out, can I just eat a tomato when I see it, right? So, please share, like, and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up and let me have a comment, right? And consider donation. I would like to have a bottle of red wine now and then to keep this thing going, right? So please show me some support, right? To encourage my output. But remember, you are in control of your philosophy. It's your experience, it's your philosophy, right? Don't let anybody tell you what you should think. Don't necessarily reject all other people's thinking, but start having your own thinking that you can then bounce against somebody else's thinking. And then be critical both of their thinking and your thinking, right? Don't become dogmatic, but don't just be, sponge, just sucking up somebody else's philosophy, because you're probably going to choose that which fits with some kind of agenda you have already, right? That's probably the hardest part of doing philosophy, is being neutral and be pure about it, rather than just cherry-picking whatever you want to be there because of your psychology or because of mommy and daddy or whatever, right? Power structures and so on. That's my appeal. Have a nice day. See you in the next one.